Good morning, everybody. This is Walk the Dog with Riot Mort, and it is Tuesday, May 20th at 6:05 a.m., give or take. A little bit of a later start today. Yeah, let's see here. Yesterday was one of those productive days. Had some important meetings with people like FFGS. Finished up the 14.5 patch, got that all locked in, which I have to say, the nice thing about a really good meta is the 14.5 patch ended up really small. I did my augment pass, and it was like even augment balance looks relatively solid. Don't get me wrong, it's the kind of like balance that like a Reddit wouldn't like, but like overall for the game, it's pretty good. The augments that ended up being nerfed were like stuff that wouldn't surprise you, or maybe it would. I think the most surprising one was like 10,000 IQ ended up being over the line. Or poor wise spending. Wise spending, that nerf was a little too harsh, so trying to fix what did we do to wise spending? I forget. But yeah, so wise spending was a little rough. Oh, right, we did the 2 for 4. That's right. So, little things on margins, but overall, it's going to be a very small patch minus the item changes, which is a good thing. And then started some 15 balance stuff. And yeah, so it was a good day yesterday. Then hung out with the wife, watched some YouTube videos and stuff like that. So it was a pretty solid day. This week looks pretty chill. Today's one-on-ones with my direct reports, as well as more 15 work. All good stuff. So, all right, so today's questions, we have some good ones. And I have to say, before I start getting into these, that some of these questions I really want to give satisfying answers to, but sometimes the answer is like disappointing, or it's just like pretty basic, right? It's like a lot of these talks are, hey, I'm going to pull behind the curtain. And sometimes you realize, there isn't a bunch of amazing magic going on. It's just a little bit of hard work and elbow grease. I always remember Aniko when he first joined the team and he saw how we'd been working for so long, and he's just like, oh, so Morton can't balance the game in a cave with a box of scraps. It's like, yeah, that's kind of how we do things. We make it work. So that leads into the first question, which is about TFT bots. So this person was asking about, early on in your rank thing, we call them Borgs, but early on in your TFT ranked experience, if you're like a legitimate new account for like your first couple games and your MMR is really low, you will occasionally run against bots. And this is a common tactic that a lot of games do, and we do it to a really light degree. But you'll have bot opponents. Now, this person the person who asked the question, this is an example where I really wanted to give a satisfying answer, because they seemed really interested on like the development of the bots and how we went about into it, and like, do we use machine learning or AI? Is there anything really clever behind the scenes about how these bots are created? And so I actually went around and asked. I talked to my game director. I was like, hey, who was the product lead on this so I can go talk to him? Thankfully, it was somebody named D-Haas, who I've been working on with like Double Up and a different project. And I talked to D-Haas. I'm like, hey, D-Haas, can you give me the inside scoop on I literally copy pasted the questions. And he's like, oh, yeah. So our bots are just design scripts. That's it. It's just a designer, and shout out to Phil. Phil did a lot of the heavy lifting here. But they're just scripts where it's like, hey, play this way, buy these things, do this. It's very simple, like logical loops. They're not anything fancy. They're not, there's something to be wowed at, marveled at. It's just like, we got them working. They're bots. They're not going to blow you away. One of the parts of the question was like, well, what are they capable of? The answer's not much. In fact, during development of bots, the big thing we were going for was we needed to make sure if a player was playing like pretty atrociously that they wouldn't lose. So these bots don't do a lot, right? Like generally we almost never want you to bot 4 in a bot game. And so, you have to, like, I think at one point we actually had an internal challenge where it was like, hey, can you purposely bot 4 against these bots and see how that feels? And it was like, we changed the scripts and adjusted them. They're not meant to be a challenge, right? Like they're there for the legitimate, like, I know we joke about like, hey, gold players or new players. No. I'm talking like legitimate new players. Like, and that's the thing. It's interesting when you talk about the game industry, it feels like there's like, people will often use new players as like this misnomer, but like, no, you still have to actually recognize the like legitimate new player. Nintendo, we would call this the 35-year-old mom who's never played a video game before. But yeah. And again, so now for anyone who's listening to this and going, oh my God, there's bots in my game. You haven't seen a bot in your game ever. Like I'm telling you, this is legitimately like your first 3 games on a new account kind of thing. And even then, if you get like 2 firsts, it goes, okay, you're good enough. It's like, you do not really see these things. So yeah. So like I said, this is an example where like, I don't have a really good satisfying answer. There's not crazy learning behind it. There's not like machine trickery or anything like that. It's just, we scripted, the logic checks of buy these units, do these things. Pretty straightforward. It's not, but sometimes, and that's the thing with game development, is a lot of these tech bros will have you believe that you need all the fancy new answers and the highest tech to make your game good. When so often, and this is actually how I got pretty successful at Riot, so often the right answer is the obvious, cheap, easy solution, which is, again, just a little elbow grease, make it work. And yeah, so again, sorry if that's not the most exciting answer, but it's the truth. Yeah. All right. Will we ever see Unity augments again? So for those who don't remember, the most common example of this that worked was an augment called Challenger Unity. And the idea was all your units benefit from your Challenger trait. So if you ran 2 Challenger, which I think was like 20% attack speed, give or take, your whole team got 20% attack speed. If you ran 4 Challenger, your whole team got like 45% attack speed. And if you ran 6 Challenger, your whole team got 70% attack speed. But the thing is, if you're running 6 Challenger, well, your team's already benefiting from Challenger anyway. And so only those 2 units that weren't Challengers would benefit from the Challenger. So most commonly, these augments were good if you had a really overpowered 3-piece that combined really well with another trait, or maybe a really, really good 4-piece, is when these augments were good. And the problem we kept running into with these was basically it was a question of the trait tree. And if the trait tree supported a good combination of units, the augments were busted. Like Challenger Unity, I remember particularly being very, 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 very strong because it combined with some other trait and was like, can't beat it. And it creates another tuning thing where it's like, hey, I have to tune for Challenger to be good on its own, but I also have to tune for Challenger to be good when you get the augment, right? It's an example of an augment that has multiple values possible and becomes pretty difficult to balance around. Now, would we ever see it again? Maybe, to be honest. And it's funny. This will actually lead really well into the meaty question later. But generally, when we look into... Oh, there's the uphill part. Okay, generally when we, looked at Unity augments back in the day, I think we looked at them and went, nope, wasn't a success, was a challenge, wouldn't do it again. But enough time has passed and traits have changed, people's understanding of the game has changed, I'd give them another go if somebody had the right trait in the right set. I'm trying to think, in set 14, would I do a Unity augment in set 14? Bruiser Unity? Probably not very good. Car coming. So yeah, Bruiser Unity, would I do that? Not really. Trying to think, what other Unity augments would I do? Marksman Unity? Nope. So anyway, something to think about, but TLDR here. Would I ever consider them again? Yeah, I would at least give it another shot. And like I said, this will come up again in one of the future, I'm foreshadowing. One of the other questions today is a really interesting topic. So yeah, TLDR here, I could see doing it again. Okay, so speaking of which, here's the meaty question. So 2 people asked different versions of this question, which is, there was a version of the question that was like, how do you guys avoid tribal knowledge? And for those who don't know, the buzzword of tribal knowledge is, let's say you've had a game like League of Legends that's been around for 15 years, and you have some people who have worked on it for like 10 years, and they know how things work. And then you have a new person join the team, and they're like, well, how am I supposed to know that the way your game engine works is this? You're like, oh, you'll just figure it out over time. You'll learn it. And so the people who know the things know what they know, but there isn't any like great documentation or learning materials to catch up on it. And so what happens is, over time, if people leave the team or you change hands or whatever, that knowledge begins to get lost. And you end up having to like relearn it, which can be really, really painful. So that's tribal knowledge. And the other version of this question was, how do you make sure that lessons that you've learned in the past stay learned and don't, new people don't like rechain them? So again, 2 shades of a very, very similar question, which is, how do we share knowledge, right? And as someone who's been on the team since right before we shipped, I have a lot of this tribal knowledge, and I have a lot of this, internal stuff and these lessons. I mean, I've now written 13 learnings articles. So to the first part of this question, tribal knowledge is a hard thing. I don't think any company out there has a magical answer for this. And it's really funny too, because I've been doing this long enough that I've seen so many different teams try to tackle this. And we're even trying to tackle this internally now on our design team. Shout out to Witty, Linda, Kent, Giovanni, who are helping me prep all the documentation. But we're trying to put all the, the lessons, the philosophies, the design rules in one really easy to read place, so that if a new designer joins the team, they can read all this, right? And if I ever retire, someone will take all that knowledge and be able to keep going. But what I've seen on so many teams is that you prep these documents, you do these big initiatives to make all these documentations, and then about 2 or 3 years pass, and assumptions change, things change, and nobody knows where the document is or reads the document anymore. When I was working on missions on League of Legends, I made a 120-page document that was like, here's all the missions, here's what we learned, here's a good type of mission, here's things like that, just like this really long, in-depth missions learning article. And then when I moved off of missions, I gave it to my replacement, Justin, and I'm like, here you go. And he read through it, that's cool. And then when Justin moved off, someone else took over missions. And sure enough, I started noticing League was doing some missions that were like, we know not to do this. Why are we doing this? What's going on here? Well, the lessons got lost and nobody opened my 120-page document or kept it updated. And we have a new person doing this, And this is so common. Like I said, I've seen this every company. It's like everyone thinks they're going to make this magical document of things you're going to learn, and then nobody reads them. I mean, hilariously enough, I did an internal poll. This was way back in like set 11, 10. I was like, hey, designers on my team, I'm just curious, be honest. How many of the actual TFT learnings articles, the public facing ones that I've written, have you guys read to like understand the game? And a few people were like, all of them. And a few people were like, 2 to 3. And a few people were like, haven't read any of them. And these are articles that you can just get on the internet. They're there. So it's one of those things that I've gotten pretty jaded on as I've gotten older, so that anytime someone comes to me and is like, hey man, time to start making your internal documentation and sharing learnings, I'm like, I don't know. We can do it, but I'm just warning you, it won't be that good in the long run. But we still do it. So like the one we're working on now, we're trying to make as good as we can. It'll be good. We'll see. So to your original question though, is like, how do you avoid tribal knowledge? I think the answer is just, you need your team to be talking a lot. And this is why I think in-office work is really, really good, right? I believe, like I learned at Nintendo through osmosis, through talking to, my boss and people on the team and learning. And it's also why you need to have a growth mindset, right? So many young people today think that like when they join a company, they're supposed to be like the star and know everything and come in and change the world. It's like, no, your first 5 to 10 years at a job, you should just be learning, experience, and really absorbing so that you can become the master. But no 23-year-old out of college is going to be the master at anything. Even if they're the world, like, trust me, there are people on my team currently who are way smarter than I am, but they just don't have that experience. And so, yeah. So my recommendation for tribal knowledge is just ask questions of your superiors, right? Like we have one designer on our team. I won't name them because I don't want the other designers to necessarily feel bad if they're not this person. But we have one person on our team who constantly is just like, give me the download. What do you do in this situation? How do you learn? Like he just absorbs it like a sponge. That's what you need. You got to absorb it all. So the other part of this question though, which is like, and this is the part I wanted to talk about because there was a follow-up response where the person was trying really hard to not be like, okay, but like you've got some lessons you've said before that you immediately contradict, okay? And this is a really good question because it's actually something that used to drive me nuts at Nintendo. Because what you don't want to do, and this is the weird thing, is let's say you have a lesson that you learned, right? Let's say a set 3 or set 4 lesson where we're like, man, we just learned that, I'll give you an example. Assassins are just not fun, okay? What you don't want is for 5 years to pass and you to never challenge that assumption again and be like, hey, we learned 5 years ago that no version of Assassins ever could possibly ever work. Therefore, we're never going to ever even consider it ever again. Because what will happen is you'll have an incredibly narrow and rigid definition of what is possible. An example of this at Nintendo that really, really pissed me off was we wanted to make a Mario versus Donkey Kong game where you would play as Mario, not the mini Marios, and control Mario. And what we kept running into was this roadblock where they were like, no, we had that meeting with Miyamoto 8 years ago, and he said we shouldn't play as Mario. Now, in the context of that meeting, it was Miyamoto was saying for that game, and the Mario controls they had built in that meeting were literally direct Mario controls, not puzzle Mario controls. But they took it as this literal Bible lesson that was like, nope, Miyamoto said it once 8 years ago. We should never, ever, ever do it again. Ever. Right? And so kind of like the Unity Augments, I think the example here is like the lesson we learned back in the Unity Augments was like, hey, these don't really work. They're not that exciting. But again, you have to challenge your own assumptions sometimes. Maybe the way you learned that lesson was wrong, or the way it was executed, so you could possibly improve it. Because this is another thing, another Nintendo lesson, which is just because it failed once doesn't mean it's going to fail every time. There are different executions of something that will yield different results. And so a lot of the times when someone's like, hey, you did a thing that directly contradicted a lesson 6 years ago, it's like, yeah, because we took another stab at it. We tried something a little different, right? I think the most common example was Dish Soap was calling us out because we had the Warwick encounter in set 3, and we said, hey, we don't want to make opening encounters that fundamentally change the entire way you play the game. And then I forget which encounter he was complaining about. I want to say it was the Lucky Shops, but I can't remember exactly. But there was one of the new encounters in 14, and he was like, you can't just say you learned this thing and then do this other thing. And it's like, well, right there, the definition of what radically changes how you play is a bit different. And typically a player like a high-level challenger player, their definition of radically change will be a little more narrow than our common player. The other thing is that sometimes, again, like different executions, maybe this one will work a little differently. And then the other aspect of that is we have a design team of many, many designers. And so sometimes you have to let people shoot their shot to get that learning themselves, right? Nobody wants to join a team. Hey, I'm a new designer on your team. I've got all these ideas. And you respond with, well, here's our Bible of things you're not allowed to do because we learned those lessons. So no fun allowed, no trying at this, right? Instead, you want to cultivate those ideas and figure out, hey, here's what we learned in the past about this. Here's some challenges you're going to run into. If you can overcome these challenges, maybe it can work. Let's figure out how to do it, right? So a good example of this is assassins. You know, we've said that like our golden rule is something shouldn't kill your carry in the first like 6 to 8 seconds of combat. That's pretty unfun. Nobody wants to have a 3-star 2 cost with 3 items sitting in the corner. And at the start of the fight, auto cast, Lux Laser hits your carry, you're dead. Like that was something we learned a long time ago. But another lesson we learned is every single fight can't be front to back, right? You need things that can disrupt the backline to add unique positional challenges, to make fights more dynamic, and to make things more interesting. So those two lessons exist and don't contradict each other. So the question is, what is the execution of an assassin that can get to the back line and not be front to back, that doesn't just kill your carry in the first 6 seconds? And that's where you see champ designs like the current Zed, or Shaco, or Rengar, right? These are champions that are not front to back, that are trying to work within the confines of these lessons. And I bet someone watching this is going, wait, I've seen Rengar kill my carry in the first 6 seconds. Again, executions aren't perfect, but it's us challenging those initial lessons, trying to find the perfect definition. And I like this example because I don't think we found the perfect assassin, like the perfect healthy version of an assassin, because it's one of those like inherent scary contradictions. Is like, is there such a thing as a healthy assassin? I don't know. Because, I mean, when Rengar was good, people hated this meta, that's for sure. You know? I know when the set first came out on PBE, Shaco scared a lot of people. Because when he's good, he's good. And this opens up other problems, right? Like, for example, why is Rengar unhealthy? Well, because he freaking heals so damn much. Okay, so now the lesson is, oh, another car. 2 cars in one day. Come on, man. So now the lesson is, the lesson is, how do you make an assassin that's front to back that also isn't a drain tank, you know? And so you keep learning and you keep pushing the development of your game, you keep adding new learnings, and you keep trying to make it better. And you won't find any new innovations if you just stagnate on those lessons of the past. So, and again, my job as sort of the gameplay director is to be the sort of guide here to like, hey, I see this new designer heading in towards this trap in this lesson we've learned in the past. Again, warn them, let them know, here are the things you're going to run into. And some designers will respond with, oh, that's true, I didn't think of that, and they'll fix it. And other designers will be like, nah, I think it'll work. I want to try this, I want to learn. And, you know, sometimes they have to roll your eyes and go, okay, good luck, let's see how it turns out, you know. And it's weird because I'm sure some of you right now are thinking, wait, but if you know it's going to be bad, you should tell them not to do it. But here's the thing, no one's all-knowing, no one's perfect, not even me. And again, if you want to have a healthy team and a healthy work culture, you can't just be the dictator who says, nope, I know this isn't going to work, I think it's terrible. Because the other thing is I tend to be one of the more conservative people on the team. And we're never going to find really, really cool stuff if I'm just shooting down everything that's outside the box. So, and that's one of the challenges of like working on a team is like there's the people angle, there's the innovation angle, there's making a solid game. Because again, if we just follow all the lessons we've learned perfectly and follow all the fundamentals, the game will get repetitive very quickly. And so if someone has it's like there's an origin in set 16 that's like very outside the box, and it's like, you know, but our lessons say don't do it for this reason or this reason. It's like, yeah, but it's actually really, really cool. And so far it's testing really well, and players seem to love it. And so it's like, you just got to find that right version, right? You have to take another shot at it, execute on it well, and not follow the law perfectly. So these lessons are more of guidance of things we've learned rather than laws. And that's kind of the way to interpret it. So yeah, that's a very long-winded answer in the ramblings of an old man. But hopefully that gives you some insight onto why maybe you see things where we kind of like contradict ourselves or do things a little differently. It's because we are chasing the innovation that keeps TFT interesting. So, all right. I had written down 2 more questions, but I think I only have time for one more. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So this one's easy. Someone was like, hey, what's the impact of these walk the dogs? Are there any like physical or mental benefits? So, physical benefits obvious, right? I need to exercise. I need to get the hell out of my office and not sit in there 12 hours a day. Get some fresh air, walk, move my leg muscles, burn some calories, not be a fat ass, you know, pretty standard physical stuff. The mental stuff, there's actually a lot of benefits. When I was first doing these walks, I would just turn on a YouTube video in my pocket, download them because there's no reception around here, and just listen to them and, you know, give me something to listen to, which apparently some of you were doing this with this, which good. But the other thing is that, like, I find, this is a little weird to talk about, but I find when things just fester in my head, I tend to overthink. I tend to not approach it well. And I know a lot of people have the same thing. This is one of the reasons why, if you've ever heard the term pair programming, where it's like you and another engineer sit down and do the code together because you'll think about it differently. This is sort of my version of that. Back at Nintendo, I had a junior designer named Phil, hilariously enough. And anytime I got stuck on something, I'd pull him into a room and I would just start talking it out. And not necessarily for Phil to give me the answer. That would happen rarely. But it was more just to like voice it out and talk through it so that it gets it out of my head and out there in the world. And whether Phil would even just listen or maybe ask a question or two, it got me thinking about things from a new angle. And eventually I would come to an even better answer than I had before. And so these walks, sharing it with all of you, and talking openly about things makes me think about things from a different angle as well. Like even the lessons learned talk we literally just did 5 minutes ago gets me thinking about, okay, well, how should I be approaching a conversation with the set 18 lead, or, just thinking about it like that rather than just festering in my head along with all the other random thoughts. And so I like that ability. That's why I like talking about TFT and talking about the game, is because I just feel like in doing so, it's a better mental exercise. Which is why, to be honest, I wish I had more people to talk to deeply about things. If you sit me down with somebody, but like one of the other problems now is with my position and my rank and my age, there's an intimidation factor and a power factor that makes that a little harder. Thankfully, I've got a couple people like Blue Velvet and Kent I can have these conversations with, but even Kent, there's still that power dynamic, which is a little weird. But then the other part is just like, again, it goes back to why I started streaming in the first place, right? Which is like, imagine being a kid and you're playing Mario 64 and you're like, this game's so cool, I want to be a game designer. I would love to just talk to Miyamoto and be like, ask him questions about frickin' Mario. That would have been so cool. And as a kid, I would have lost my frickin' mind. And so now that I'm here in this position where I'm apparently some high-ranking senior director or whatever, feels like I should do the same for the kids who, not just the kids, but the people who want to have these conversations, who genuinely want to like learn about game development or have a tough conversation about why we're contradicting our lessons or figure out why we didn't ship a certain type of mechanic. And so I just feel like I owe it to people because that's what I would have wanted as a kid. And so getting to do that to me makes me feel good. It they always say one of the things in life is you need to chase what makes you happy and what satisfies you. I think talking to people about video games generally makes me happy. So I like doing it. All right, we're at the uphill part. I'm going to start panting. We're at the end of the video. It's 32 minutes. Hopefully this has been good. I didn't get through all the questions today, but yeah. All right, I'm going to go have some breakfast, take the kids to school, get to work, things like that. So hope you all have a great day. Happy Tuesday. That's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.